So I just saw Madam Web and oh no. To be honest, I kind of had no intention of covering this thing at all. I didn't even really have any intention of seeing it, but I did say on Twitter that I'd always support any movie starring the woman who kicked off the domino effect into destroying Ellen's career, and I'm nothing if not a man of my word. But I didn't go in blind and get taken by surprise or anything. I, like you all, saw the trailers. I've seen the unenthusiastic and brutally honest press tour Dakota Johnson has been hilariously blunt on, and I was aware of the negative buzz surrounding this thing like a colony of irritating flies swarming around the hot aftermath of a dumpster fire. I knew fine well what I was getting into. Or so I thought. What shocked me so much that I felt compelled to immediately gather my thoughts into this previously unplanned video was that actually, Madame Web, it turns out, is not as bad as its reception would have you believe. It is in fact so much worse. There is a specific brand of joy in this movie that I haven't felt in a long time that can only be described as the delicious taste of a true, bona fide, one-of-a-kind turkey of a movie.
Nice.
Sure, we've had plenty bad superhero films by this point in time. Some of you might gesture to the obvious low-hanging fruit of Sony's previously just as awful solo superhero effort of Morbius and ask, did that not give you the same feeling? And I cannot articulate enough how Morbius isn't even in the same league of bad as Madame Web. And that's because no matter how terrible that film might have been, and yes, it was awful, besides a minor awkward scene where Matt Smith dances while ogling himself in the mirror, it was never fun bad. It was just cripplingly boring, just unbelievably plodding and self-serious and endlessly unpleasant to watch. The memes were funny, sure, but the film was just bad in the most uninteresting way possible. It's why I never made a video on it despite what would have likely been an easy algorithm boost. I simply didn't have anything at all that interesting to say about it. Madame Web though, now that's a bad movie. That's the real shit. That's the beautiful bad. We're talking a film where the main antagonist, for reasons that can only be explained by an absolute mess going on behind the scenes, has seemingly had almost 100% of his dialogue dubbed over with very obnoxiously obvious ADR that is often out of sync with his lip movement. We're talking about a film that is so exposition heavy that every single line of robotic, clunky, awkward dialogue sounds like aliens trying to articulate a Wikipedia plot synopsis in a language they have only just realized they can speak and they are still trying to come to grips with. We are talking about a movie where in its very first impression it offers us drops a line that goes something like, I only agreed to be your bodyguard and protect you when we came to Peru because you were looking for that spider and you said you could find it here. I've heard it can give you powers. And asks you to still take it seriously. I'm not being facetious or hyperbolic here. I may be quoting this from memory, but that is, to my best recollection, almost word for word one of the first lines of dialogue we hear in the film. And this clunky, AI-generated sounding wall of text is then exposited upon further for about 4 more paragraphs as two actors trying their best to navigate this truly inhuman dialogue, repeat and slightly expand on this point back and forth to one another with equally rambling nonsense lines in case we missed the information the first time. Yes, even the exposition has exposition. It was at this point, not even a minute into the film, that I sat up and leaned in with an abject glee as I realised, oh, it is that kind of movie. And let me tell you, my friends, not since The Godfather has a film's opening scene set the tone so perfectly for what is to come. Just as Bonacera's utterance of I believe in America promised a damning examination of the American dream through the machinations of its criminal underworld, so too does Madame Web's static and uninterestingly framed actors doing their best impression of mannequins gaining sentience promise a truly unique brand of awful to come. And, just like The Godfather, it delivers on those promises. At its core, the film is mostly standard post-MCU superhero fare. Cassandra Webb is a paramedic with a tragic past involving the death of her mother, who comes to find herself inheriting abnormal powers. Specifically, she gains the power to see potential futures after having a near-death experience seemingly awakens these dormant abilities. Where Madam Web strays a bit from the individual inherits powers and the responsibility that comes with it formula is, in a genuinely refreshing decision, the film attempts not to set the standard action stakes of a world-ending global event, but rather attempts a suspense/mystery angle, with Webb witnessing the murder of 3 teenage girls and then being thrust into a situation where she has to rise to the occasion and prevent that outcome, all while being pursued by a relentless superpowered killer with similar abilities to the famous comic book icon Spider-Man. I say attempts though, because it executes this goal with a level of incompetence usually only found within the British government. As with every attempt at something that could be interesting, it fails to jump the hurdles. Because let's give credit where credit is due. A Spider-Man type super being that's basically a slasher villain could be an incredible premise. A reluctant protagonist who early in the narrative is shown to be terrible with kids having to protect and in doing so coming to bond with 3 children is a solid story. And putting a Final Destination style Vision twist in a superhero narrative is a unique take on a stale formula. However, it all plays out so poorly. The villain is less the Terminator or Michael Myers, and more an extremely goofy looking presence undermined by wonky compositions, bad CGI, and the previously mentioned out of sync ADR. The relationship between Webb and the teens could be the emotional crux of the film, and many scenes seem to imply that that's the plan, but while the teens have moments of chemistry with each other and are engaging enough in their performances, they are never fully explored beyond their archetypes of socially awkward shy girl, rebel, and nerd to be anyone you could become attached to. And also, that's not aided by the fact that anytime there's a whiff of emotional growth between them or Webb, the movie insists on yanking you away as fast as it can to some unrelated garbage, be it some trippy Vision visuals, an incomprehensible action scene, or in one particularly egregious case, our protagonist suddenly turning round and saying, "I have to go to Peru," and taking a 15-minute or so detour into some contrived nonsense with a side character who only exists to explain lore and is never seen again. And as far as the superhero element with the Visions and the Spider people, oh my god, it fails monumentally on that front. You know how in superhero origin movies they always have that moment of elation the first time they try their new powers? Like Superman's first flight, or that first wall climb and big jump in Raimi's Spider-Man. Those sequences generally serve 2 purposes. 1, they bring us into the fantasy escapism of having superpowers, and 2, they explain to the audience how the powers work. Let's take Spider-Man's first go of his powers as an example again. It's a really great dialogueless burst of joy punctuated by a comedic punchline that somewhat explains the limitations of those powers. We get it, it's fun, and the film continues. In Madam Web, we do this scene about 5 times. The first time is kind of traditional, albeit extremely uninspired, as Webb experiments with opening a window to save a bird she just had a vision of crashing into it. She also narrates out loud the whole experience because of course the audience are complete morons and we might miss the information otherwise. The second, third, fourth and fifth time all occur on a train, where the film, I guess, is still not convinced we got it and has Webb relived the same sequence multiple times with her acting confused on every occurrence, really hamming it up like, whoa, what is happening? And dude, we got it the first time. The superhero stuff doesn't even succeed on a pandering fan service level. You know all of those trailer clips where the girls are doing all the hero stuff in the spider costumes? Doesn't happen. Not really. The trailer implies it's a core part of the movie, but those costumes only narratively occur in visions of a possible future and make up like maybe 3 minutes of screen time. Every decision is so bizarre. At one point, our protagonist is wanted for kidnapping, until the movie just forgets that's a thing, and it's never really resolved. It just stops being a problem. The film has one of the most out-of-place needle drops in history, where the 3 girls are just walking through a forest and then suddenly, scandalous by Mystique starts playing in a manner that is absolutely not complimentary to the action we're seeing on screen. It feels so out of place. One character, whose name I don't even remember, is given a big emotional death, despite the fact that we have only seen him in one single, completely inconsequential barbecuing scene prior to this moment. I don't know why he gets a big melancholy music playoff. And spoilers, but the thing that takes down the villain in the end? A really obnoxious and in-your-face Pepsi product placement, as a massive Pepsi sign that is prominently displayed throughout the entire climax collapses on top of him. And speaking of the villain, could anybody tell me what his motivation is? I get that he wants to kill the teens as he has visions of them killing him, so he wants to get to them first, but why do they kill him? I don't know, find out in the sequel they're probably never gonna make, I guess. You can argue it's obvious that he's a bad guy, and so probably in the future they would have just became superheroes and went after him anyway, and that's the vision he's seeing because he probably did something evil that put him on their radar. But then I ask you, why did he even go all super evil in the first place? The closest thing the film offers to an explanation is he grew up poor? I don't know why the plan to fix that problem is to steal a magical spider from the Amazon and get superpowers, but sure, I mean, I guess that's one way to cope. This contrived, overly complicated backstory and setup is worth it, to be fair, if not for any other reason than to get to the scene where he explains his attempted murder spree to our protagonist by saying, "You don't know what these girls become. In the future, they have powers." To which, no joke, she replies, "What do you mean? The girls? They have powers? In the future?" Just stiltedly repeating his exposition back at him in a different order. I mean, Jesus. This movie is stinky. Madam Web doesn't just feel bad, it feels genuinely unfinished. You can almost hear the contradicting studio notes yelling over each other as the film plays out before you. Cries of, "Needs more action," and "No, the audience aren't going to get that, explain it more," and "I don't care if it looks or sounds bad, we've got a deadline to meet, just get it done," seem to haunt every frame like the ghost of a greedy executive clinging to our mortal realm only through the pure desperation of trying to force the establishment of a hit cinematic interconnected movie universe, too out of touch to even realise that they're 10 years too late to chase that trend and that most audiences don't even want that anymore. With this in mind and the feeling so omnipresent throughout the whole final product, I can only sympathise with the film's cast and crew. Like, can you imagine being the editor on this thing? Having to cobble together rushes under the weight of 1,000 different studio mandates and pushing it out the door before you can even properly sync the dialogue? Obviously, I'm purely speculating on what's exactly went wrong here, but it's truly a rare thing to get a multi-million-dollar mess this seemingly incompetent. It reeks of studio interference. Regardless of what caused the film's issues though, I have to say, I kinda can't recommend it enough. I mean, dear God, please don't be an idiot like me and pay for it, but if you get a chance to catch it for free, it is 10 out of 10 trash. It's stifling your laughter bad. It's quotably bad. It's brilliantly, bizarrely, beautifully bad. And that brings us to the end of the video. And contrary to what this vid might suggest, I'm actually not a big fan of dunking on media. If you're familiar with my channel at all, you'll know that while I don't avoid fair criticism where I think it's deserved, I'm far more prone to raising art up rather than putting it down wherever I can. That's one of the reasons I felt like doing this video, because as bad as I thought the film was, I at least had a celebratory angle I could honestly approach it with. And speaking of celebration, if you're into horror games at all, myself and Creator VC, the hit studio behind incredible documentaries like the In Search of Darkness franchise, are currently creating a brand new documentary on horror video games, and it is on sale right now. Featuring exclusive interviews and insights from 40 plus creative talents and experts behind decades of horror gaming history, the series cast hosts a wide range of incredible names, from industry titans like Silent Hill series composer and producer Akira Yamaoka and Dead by Daylight co-directors Matthew Cote and Dave Richards, indie darlings like Faith the Unholy Trinity documentary creator Adolf and Iron Lung developer Dave Zemansky, and even legendary veterans like Ken and Roberta Williams, co-founders of Sierra Online, and David Mullock, producer of titles like I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, Darkseid 2 and Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, as well as many, many more. This documentary, named Terabytes, is available for pre-sale now. This 5-hour long series will premiere early next year, but by backing us now, you'll not only get access to a slew of exclusive pre-release merch and events, you'll also get a digital copy of our previous gaming mega documentary FPS shortly after the campaign ends, and you'll get your name in the credits. The campaign ends on March 3rd, so act quick to secure your copy and get a limited numbered edition if you order the Blu-ray. You can find the full trailer, the full list of our confirmed and still growing cast, exclusive pre-sales merch, and more at the link in the description. This is a true dream project for me, and it would mean the world if you could support me in this endeavour. Other than that, I've been Dan Drambles. Thank you all for watching. Remember to subscribe to my Only Dans, and I'll see you next video.